Go for it, sir.
Thank you. I'll try it this time, a third time. Oconee County Planning Commission, call it to order. It's Monday, September the 20th, 2021. David, would you say a few words for us, please?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county employees as they perform their duties, that they may return home safe to their families after every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray, amen.
Alex.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes. Are there any additions or deletions or corrections to the minutes for August the 16th? None? If not, can I have a motion to approve them, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? They pass, they are approved. Public comment for non-agenda items. Has everybody signed up that wants to, just for general comments? I assume so, okay. Commission member comments. I have a couple just to start that out. As I mentioned to you some time ago, we were tasked by the Planning and Economic Development Committee to address curb cuts and auxiliary turn lanes. In that endeavor, we have had 3 meetings, and they have been with Mr. Root, Vivian, and myself. The last meeting was with the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and they said that they will support our effort if we come forward with some additional curb cut or auxiliary turn lane information. We have an upcoming meeting, hopefully this week, with Greenville, if we can get that coordinated. Apparently not. I can see from Vivian's head turning back. So, October the 4th, there will be a public hearing here on the development standards. If you don't know, the county council sent it back to us for a public hearing. So we'll have that on October the 4th. On the horizon, flag lots. Probably a lot of you don't know what they are. Somebody had to draw a picture for me. But we need to further coordinate that with the South Carolina Department of Transportation requirements, and we will start working on that in the very near future. On the agenda, you'll see an extra item that I added there about number 5, public comments. About if you're not able to attend, you can send us an email and the address that you can send it to us. I'm going to ask the GIS lady, it will be the end of the 3rd quarter coming up for this year, to give us an update on to addresses issued in the county. So that'll be coming up. Anybody else has anything?
I do.
All right.
Basically, I'm putting this under new business, under our comment section, but I've had several constituents ask me to investigate or look into the status of the convenience center that was supposed to be built in the Mossy, Picket Post, Troy Valley area. I've had a lot of inquiries about that. And I didn't know, Vivian, if we had, they said that they had done a petition before, and brought a petition to the county.
I am unaware of what you're speaking about.
Okay, well, when they done the convenience center several years ago, they bought these sites to put them. And for some reason, the one at Tomasi, which is supposed to be right next to the DAR school, was never constructed. Right now, it's used as a storage place to put sand and gravel and some of the county vehicles.
Okay.
So those folks in that community have to travel quite a ways to the convenience center. And probably population-wise, that's one of the fastest growing areas in our communities. And so they've just, some questions have been, what can we do about the convenience centers in that area? It's a long way. They either have to go to Salem, Ebenezer.
I can reach out to our solid waste. director and find out.
Okay.
It may help you to know, the DAR has changed several things as far as what they do and who's in charge. So you may have to talk to somebody new to get the status on
I
that.
can't hear it, can y'all? I don't know if we can.
Say that one more time, please.
Bring her up to the podium.
It may help you to know.
Can you come up here where we can hear you better?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, would you tell us your name, please, when you come up here?
Holly Holden. The DAR has changed some of their policies. They're not doing as much with the children on campus. So some of the funding and the decisions may have to go to a different person. You may just have to call their business office on campus and find out who you need to speak to about that land purchase and going forward with it. Because they did run the thrift store on Highway 11. They're not doing that anymore. They've turned it into a private business. They don't house children there anymore, but they are still doing an educational program. So a lot of things have changed on their campus in the last year and a half, 2 years.
That's my understanding, the county already owns the property. They're right at the end of the road.
Yeah, I know where you're talking about, the green boxes used to be years ago.
That's correct, yeah.
But, you know, depending on what they've changed and who's in charge, that may be a hiccup somewhere that they're saying not yet or not there or.
Correct, okay.
Because most everybody that pays for anything on the campus is from out of state. There's very few people in state that have anything to do with their financial issues.
Right, oh yeah, I've heard it, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else got anything?
I just got a question. Where do people make public comment for agenda items on our agenda?
Right here. Public comments for non-agenda items and whatever staff comments, and right in there, somewhere in there. I think it might have been dropped off for some reason. Anybody else got anything? David?
Can the public comment on the agenda items as they come up? Since we don't have a public comment for agenda items section?
Well, what we have is, if somebody wants to talk about tiny homes or RV parks or the scrapyard, then we bring them up at that time so that we don't lose continuity. That's the reason for that. I have about 5 sheets here with people, and then I'll ask again when we get to that to be sure that they're included. Gary?
Okay, we're on member comments on our agenda.
Yes, we are.
Okay, just want to make sure. I have 2 items I want to speak about. One was I-85 Exit 4, and the other one is Fair Play meeting for master plan. Okay, I-85 Exit 4, I had a question for Vivian. Can you give us any update on what Speedway is up to as far as construction?
May I?
Please.
They have not pulled a permit yet to start construction, and what that means is they have to do that application in order to start the whole process. So they have not, they had their special exceptions hearings for signs, but for the construction of the structure itself, the building itself, they have not pulled a permit yet.
The issue being that there's already safety traffic problems out at Exit 4 at certain times of the day. And because of those, you know, we think the Speedway coming in is going to add to those safety traffic problems. And I heard last week that a pickup truck ran into a head-on collision with a transfer truck, you know, a tractor trailer truck. So my fear is that someone's going to get injured so bad or killed, and we're not doing our due diligence, I don't think, as a commission to look into this. And what I would recommend is that we have a traffic study that's paid for by Oconee County to look at what's going on out there, because the state, even though Speedway's coming in, my understanding is the state does not have any obligation to look at the problem that exists there now. So if we want to look at the safety of Oconee residents, and I think that's one of our primary concerns is always safety, especially when there could be someone killed. I think we really need to take this seriously, and I know it's on our list of topics that we want to take care of, but I think we need to get a little bit more enthusiasm for getting with our administrators, letting them know that this is a real problem, and get some funding for a study, a traffic study that would include possibly even part of Anderson County. If we can get Anderson County to help pay for it, that's great. But if we can't, I think we still have obligations to the residents of Oconee County to provide funds for a traffic study to be done there. I've got some other information. If you're interested, I'll be glad to share it with you. But I'd like to move on to the other topic, which is Fair Play meeting, which is coming up on this Thursday at 6:30. It'll be at Beaver Dam Baptist Church, and it's at 6:30 on Thursday, September 23rd. It's going to be a robust meeting. They've got an agenda that includes economic development, Sewer South master plan, Sewer South update, and then also moving forward with the master plan, which has been funded through Oconee County to do a master plan for Fair Play, which we're very excited about. Those are the only things I wanted to bring up, but I think we've got some work to do. And I'd love for any of the commissioners to attend the meeting on Thursday if they have time to do that.
Mike?
I'd like to talk back to the I-85 about what Mr. Gollum was saying. Doing the traffic study, just as a question, what are you hoping to glean from the study? And the reason I ask is I was real surprised when we had DOT come in here and talk about that there was no more enforcement or care about that exit than seemed to be that they had control of. And I would agree, everything that you see out there is a nightmare. What would you think that the study would convey that would help us in giving any kind of control?
Okay, well, number one, we know that things are bad now. If, just using common sense, as more things develop out there on that exit, it's going to get worse, not better. So what I would say is that we have a responsibility to plan for the future. If we don't start planning now, in the near future, things are going to get worse. And what I would like is for professionals to study the area and give us some solutions, which are going to be big buck items. Could be possibly an additional bridge put in, turn the road into a 4-lane highway. That's, maybe bigger than what they would recommend. But that's what I envision in the future we would possibly need to take care of the problem. What I'd like to emphasize, Mike, is that I'm not a professional, I don't know, but we got professionals that are willing to do the work for us if we can pay them. And I think we need to really get, moving forward on trying to get a study done out there. Because the state, as you mentioned, the state is not going to do that on their own. They want the county to pay for the study.
And you're hoping to see the amount of traffic would dictate some other policy out there?
The amount of traffic.
Well, so a traffic study, you're looking at traffic studies, so you're looking at the amount of traffic going across that bridge and then the congestion that's existing on the two existing lanes. My thought has been that when that speedway goes in, that they've not said, okay, you've got to come and take this turn, and we've discussed the fact that 18-wheelers might not be able to make that turn, even though that's going to be a trucking stop, coming off of what we've determined to be a county road, is that correct?
Grubbs, I believe, is a county road.
That we don't have any policies in place that say, hey, the entrance, we need dual entrances, or there needs to be an 18-wheeler entrance off to this side. But I haven't found that there's anybody that's going to say, this is what needs to happen to give any relief.
Okay, well, that's the purpose of the study, is to assess the situation and make recommendations for improvement. I mean, if we don't have that in the written contract, as far as getting recommendations for improvement, we don't have anything.
Well, and that was my initial question, is what do you hope to glean and what do you hope to ask the study to do? So,
Okay, well, I hope I answered that.
yes.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this, was there not another avenue that you were exploring to maybe get some relief?
I can't think of what that was. Sorry if can you give me any idea of what you're talking about?
You were talking to your county council member who was going to talk to somebody else.
Oh, okay. If you're interested in that, so I talked to Glenn Hart, and he said that he would talk to Bill Sanford to see if he had any idea at the state level what he could do to possibly bring more attention to this. That's the only thing I can think of that you might be referring to. We haven't heard anything back from Glenn yet.
Maybe give him another call when you get a chance,
Okay.
when it works out. Any other comments? Alex,
Should
you're
we,
quiet down there.
you know, I don't mind if we, maybe on the next meeting or whenever we could add that to the agenda. I think it's worthwhile, if nothing else, we can send because I don't know how far we've got with that. Did we send anything to council and say, this is a problem we keep seeing, give us some guidance? Because I think it does need to keep being discussed. I don't know how much ability we have to change things, but, keep it in on council's desk, so to speak.
At some point, we may want to entertain a motion that says we need to ask the administration to have a contract for a study. I mean, but I wanted to bring this up just under discussion. This isn't even on the agenda. But we need to get it on the agenda, and we need to, do some homework. We need to, I'll probably have some more comments on this from people after, fair play.
I think in the past, we had to see how much a study would cost, and then we had to go to county council and ask, this is a study, we would have to approve it and all, and then get the county council to fund it, if that were the case. So I think either way, it's got to go back to county council to move any farther than what we're doing now, to be honest.
Well, let's work forward in that direction. Vivian, you wanted to add something?
I believe the Speedway was required to do a traffic study. I'm pretty sure they are required to do a traffic study. I think SCDOT asked them to do a traffic study.
Okay.
Know the results.
I can
I don't see
talk to that a little bit if you want me to. My understanding is that they do have to do a traffic study, but it doesn't have to include some of the current conditions that are out there. For example, my understanding is they don't have to include anything other than just their road front, and how they're planning on getting people in and out. In other words, they don't have to include the existing safety traffic problem that we have out there.
On a whole, you mean, not just that property that it's.
I believe that's
Tell you
true.
what, let's be sure it's on the agenda the next time. See if we can work it in on October the 4th, but with that other public hearing that we have going.
That's a good point, because if it did include the existing traffic problem, we wouldn't have to have another study. But since it doesn't include it, it's up to the county to have to provide the funding for a safety traffic study.
Then, anybody else got anything up here? Vivian, you got a couple of things for us?
I got a couple of things for you. I just wanted to update you on maybe some subdivisions and things that are going on. There's one that's about to be recorded, that is 68 homes in Stakina Trail, which is 159 there. That one's coming real soon. I have 3 other subdivisions in the works. One is 119 homes, the other one's 175 homes, the other one is 66 homes. So those are all in the next year probably going to be, stamped and start selling lots. The new thing I found that people are doing is they're just buying the land and they're coming off existing roadways, which makes it cheaper, easier. I have 3 of those. One is 13 lots, one is 35 lots and there's 20 lots. So those are easy, all they have to do is cut those properties up, I look at it, go, okay, as long as it meets our standards. There's no new roads, they're simple, they're easy, they're quick. Let's see. We have a code enforcement officer, he has been commissioned, and he is out starting to
Code enforced.
enforce codes. Along the lines of what y'all were talking about here, which is Speedway, I have please stop a minute. Has pulled the permit. This is across from Walmart, right there on that corner. The main entrance is going to be on High Tech. And they will be sharing an entrance with Dixie Flooring on the 123 side. So that is, they have pulled the permit for that. So I just wanted to update you on that.
That where the current S&S building is?
Sorry?
That where the current S&S building is? You said on the corner across from Walmart?
It was just demolished, and whatever was there was just
Yes.
demolished not that long ago.
It's the parking lot in the front of it.
Okay.
So that's where that is going.
And they've got one ingress egress.
It's a mess. That road is always jammed up with them
Thinking that's a
stoplight getting into
terrible
Walmart. I mean, it's really gonna be interesting. It'll be a real challenge.
Yes.
Anything else that you wanna tell us about?
The independent assisted living facility has finally pulled their permit. They are going to start constructing soon. I think they want to break ground in November. And I think that does it.
Wonderful. A lot of activity over there.
Could she tell us where these subdivisions are gonna be located? Can you do that, or is that?
The one is on Chiquita Trail on 59 there.
That's the first one, yeah.
That's the first one. There's another one, Wells Station, it's on Wells Highway.
Right.
That's that one where you see the pushing dirt. The other two homes I didn't write down, I don't remember where they are. The other two subdivisions.
Anything else?
I've got it. The ones where you said they were going off of existing roads, are they doing the setup where they're putting a house up on the front of the road and then doing a driveway down in between?
That is actually why this flag lot thing came up.
Okay.
Because yes, they are doing that, and I had some conversations with SCDOT about it, and their standards are different than ours.
In other words, ours aren't as, theirs are like this and ours are like,
Exactly.
theirs are like this and ours are like this, so we need
require
to.
the 30 feet, and they require 60-40 driveway.
So based on these subdivisions with this design, are we addressing that under a flag lot at a later date, or have you already approved those?
I have not approved those yet, they haven't pulled permits for them yet. Right now, according to the ordinance, I have to approve them.
According to the ordinance now.
So it's something for the future, but if he hands me these, if he applies for these tomorrow, I have to approve them.
You understand flag lots, I'll tell you what, she had to draw a picture for me, that was something. All right, next thing is tiny homes. Did anybody want to make a public comment? Nobody had their name on the sign. Howard, come on up here and talk to us about tiny homes.
All right.
Please, don't hold back.
Good afternoon, I'm Howard Frady, Director of Oconee County Building Codes. And I guess this is probably one of the main questions I get weekly is tiny homes, RVs, how you can live in them. Currently, the IRC, which is what the state and the county have adopted, the 2018 IRC, we have an appendix Q that addresses tiny homes site built. So that would not be like a park model or anything like that. It would be built on site. It's about a half a page, so it doesn't give you a whole tremendous amount. Right now, we don't get a lot of stick-built tiny homes. We're getting requests for, and I know I've talked to several of the members, roadside storage buildings, large campers. The problem with large campers or roadside storage buildings is they're not designed per the IRC. And for my office to issue a CO, which is a certificate of occupancy, they have to be built to the residential code. And in most cases, they're not. Structurally, wind speeds, wind loads, foundation, all that, in most cases, model energy code will not be met in any of these structures. So right now, we're kind of flying through the air on this thing. I pretty much told people, if you have it built, so we have stick-built homes, we have modular homes and mobile homes that can be CO'd at this point. Anything else, RVs, we cannot do a certificate of occupancy on. I do know Mr. Root and myself and Vivian and her staff have been kind of, and as you'll see in the handouts, there's some other communities that we've kind of researched along with Vivian's office and just some handouts of how they're kind of doing it. I'm not sure if that's something we'll have to do via ordinance. I'm pretty sure it can't be a department policy. So that's kind of the thing I was running around with Mr. Root, trying to see how we could go about it, but I'm thinking it's probably gonna need to be an ordinance. So those are our main issues is just people want affordable housing, and I'm not against it. But I'm handcuffed as far as issuing COs on structural development. So if y'all have questions,
Howard, I want to be sure that we give you what you need so that you can do your job effectively and we can provide safe housing. I talked to him just before the meeting, and I said that Vivian and I would get with him and work with him and see what he needed, and then we'll come back to you folks in pretty quick order if we can, and see if we can address his issues effectively. RVs are going to come up later on.
yes.
In the discussion here. And right now, are RVs considered, you don't issue a CO for an RV?
No, sir.
Okay, all
What
right.
we do for RVs is we issue a trade permit for the electrical only. And they are required to have sewer or septic before the permit's issued. We go out and inspect the power pedestal only, that it meets the code for the RV. And we CC that, which is a certificate of completion, just for the power. Has nothing to do, because technically they're supposed to be able to move that RV out, maybe bring another one in. Or we know that doesn't happen all the time in Oconee County, but that's the intent of it, because we cannot CO something we didn't see built.
What about, let me just ask you, you mentioned large RVs. We're talking large RVs?
Oh, well, I live in a small lake cabin, and there's some that have more square footage than my house. So, yeah, there's some fairly large RVs.
But they're not built to they're not
No,
built
sir.
to your IRC
They're all
standard.
considered RVs, and we do not CO those. We do not grant certificates of occupancy for that. Now, the difference in an RV and a modular home or a mobile home, they're built in a factory and federally regulated. And it comes with a certification, and we inspect the setup, the tie down, the power, the plumbing, and that's the thing, the decks. That's what we inspect on modulars and mobiles.
Okay. David?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What does a certificate of occupancy give the user the right to do?
To live in it, full time.
Okay, so,
And if you reference the park model records I have in there, it specifically says at the bottom, they're not intended for full-time dwelling.
so how do you define full-time?
Full-time dwelling.
So if they
Year-round,
come there and live there for 3 weeks at a time and then they go away and come back, that's not full-time?
well, that would be something somebody else would have to determine, and that's what we've been talking about with this commission is, I can only go so far, and I can use the IRC, the 2018 IRC, and the South Carolina Residential Code for something I see getting built. Otherwise, it has to have engineered design from a factory, and RVs do not meet that requirement. That's why we do plug and cord on RVs. And I worked after the tornado, they were blown off Utica Mill Hill, and I walked by and there's hot wires, so it's dangerous. Whereas if we got them plugged in, and so we do that with park models, we do that with all RVs. They are plug and cord. We do not hardwire them for that very reason. And so not to dodge your question. I'm not trying to dodge your question. I'm not sure I know how to answer it effectively until we can figure out some way that somehow you can live in them full time.
Yeah, I guess ultimately my question comes back to, how do you enforce something like that? If somebody comes in and they live in something and you don't know if they're permanently occupying it, they're there, some they're not.
Well, see,
some.
I
How
don't
do you
enforce that. That's why I only issue a permit for the power. I don't have the manpower to enforce it, and really it's not our place to do so. We know that in this county, I drive around it every day. There's many that are there and have been lived in. I mean,
And no CO.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do not issue COs on RVs.
Frankie?
All right, you don't give a CO for the campers, but yet the state says that you can live in them permanently. So, why, I don't understand. I know we talked earlier, but I still don't
Right.
understand if the state says you can live in it as long as you want to till you die, that they can't get a CO from the county.
Well, if I had a mandate from the state that said that, and that's what I talked with Mr. Root about, I'm willing to do anything we can to make it possible if that's what needs to be done. I'm not against any of it. I don't have a preconceived notion of anything. I'm just trying to go by what the law says and keep my department and the county out of litigation. And so the Appendix Q for tiny homes is really the only thing we have, which we can inspect any size home. We got them up to 12,000 square feet and down to, 800 square feet. So I agree with you, Frank. I do. I would like to know the answer to that as well.
You have the same problems with basically storage buildings.
That's
and,
correct, yes.
Containers that
That's right.
people turn into homes that they're not designed for that. They're not built, because they're mostly built with 2x4s, and I know our building code says it has to have different size lumber for the floors, certain lumber for the ceiling to keep
Correct.
stuff from falling in or caving in. So you have the same problem. You can give them a CC, but not the CO.
That's right, and they would normally use those as accessory structures, she sheds, man cave, farm, little garden shack or something like that. I did one the other day for a guy that reloaded ammo. That's what he used it for, but it's not to dwell in, and that's the difference. So yes, I have people call me weekly. I bought a 14x40 shed in Seneca or Anderson or Toccoa, and I want to make it into a home. What can I do to make it into a home? Well, you're going to have to rebuild it, because they're not, if you look at their documentation from the factory says not to be used as a dwelling, for storage only. So there again, Mr. Pearson, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, and I talked with Mr. Root about this as well, hey, we're doing this in the wrong way, or the state has a law that says I have to issue a CO, then I would entertain that. That's fine. But as it stands right now, I don't have that. All I have is the IRC and the ICC to lean on. So we can find any legal authority to do so, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But right now, I don't have that.
Anybody else got anything?
I was just gonna ask about the magnitude of the problem, which you just answered. It is unfortunate that people will make decisions not knowing the information. So do you have any insight as to the educational component?
Yes, sir. I actually told my staff, send all those questions to me. What, our counter is our information center. So when they come in, I've directed the ladies in my office, great staff, if they bring up storage shed, they need to call me. And they need to call me before they buy it. Because I've had ladies call me crying, I bought this thing, I got my life savings in it, and that makes me feel bad. But by the same token, I have a job to do, and I have to protect the county. And I cannot issue a CO on something that's not built to the 2018 IRC. That's it. And yes, I feel bad. And I have a 78-year-old mother. If she called, I would want somebody to be nice to her, you know. And I am, but it's disheartening at times because they'll go and purchase the building before they call us. So that is something we've talked about when they come in or if they call and discuss it in any way, whether it be container homes, which we do know Mr. Root found there's some provisions in the 21 code. It's a 3-year code cycle that would allow, that would have provisions in an appendix for the container homes. But they're going to generally just be engineered from the ground up. Because when you start cutting in the side of it, as Mr. Pierce and I discussed, that affects the integrity of the structure itself anyway. So that's one reason we're looking into it. And if you look through the documents from Gaffney or, I don't know, Abbeville, wherever they were, Greenville and Spartanburg counties, that's one thing that we're wanting to look into is, as I said earlier, if I can put that on the county website, tiny homes would be stick-built only, storage sheds cannot be used as residences. So, yes, that's part of what we're asking. Can we do that as a policy? Or before I put that on the building code's website, do we need some kind of ordinance to do it? And so,
I think maybe this is just my opinion, you know, and it's not worth that much possibly in this situation, but if we had more enforcement, it could be that some of your problems might be diminished, you know, because I think what could be happening, and this is again just off the top of my head, some 80-year-old woman says, hey, my nephew's living in one of these down the street.
that's
And
correct.
they go, oh, well, I'll do it too. You know, so if it's not being enforced, people feel like they can do whatever someone else is doing. So,
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've got myself and 4 guys to cover this entire county, and I was shaking in my boots when Vivian was naming off all those subdivisions going in. I do not have a police arm of my department.
right.
We strictly do building codes. Not to say that I agree with you. What I do try is to be informative, and I'll say, look, if you've got a factory that has built one that meets the code, send me the drawings. I'll happily look at them. For the structural, model energy code, insulation, all those things have to be met for it to be a dwelling and to get a certificate of occupancy. So really, yes, as sad as it is, I think it's gotten a little better since in the last year or so. I'm not getting quite as many calls, knock on wood, about them, because I think just by people calling and talking to our staff and or them referring them to me or emailing or calling me, and I answer them and I try to give them the best advice I can.
Because you do, you know, inform somebody after already making an investment.
That's right, and that's the toughest thing, especially people that are on fixed income. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard to do. And then I'm like, I can't. They'll call me and say, how can we turn it into a house? We almost have to rebuild it. And by the time you do that, you're not really, I mean, they're not gonna save any money. So, yes, sir.
We're gonna get together and we're gonna
That's fine.
get after this problem that you've got, and
Okay.
we'll put that on there with exit 4, and see what we can do for you. Thank you very, very much.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very
Really
much.
do.
Yes, sir.
Be back in touch in short order, okay?
If you need me again, just let me know, okay?
Thank you,
Thank
Howard.
you.
Anybody else got anything for Howard? Anybody?
Sir?
No, I just want to be sure. You're.
If y'all have questions.
Yeah.
I'm
I think
here.
we're good, Howard. I
Well,
think we're
just the
good.
thing I'd bring up, I don't know if it be the county, I don't know if how you'd ever implement this, but the people that sell the modular homes, I think they should shoulder some of the responsibility of informing their customer, you
Yes.
can't live in this thing.
Yes.
I
Well,
don't
there's
know
one-
if there's even any way to do that.
There's one in an adjacent county that, and every one of them I ask them, and I call the manufacturer or the sale, where they bought them, the place they bought them from. And I specifically asked them that. Did you tell this person that they could live in this thing? Oh, no, we didn't tell them that. Our buildings are for storage only. But you go to their website and it says can be used as a cabin. So, yeah, it's kind of false advertising.
But we have
There's a
no.
difference between a cabin, or like an accessory structure that your kids go camp out in for the weekend, and a dwelling
Yeah.
that you're gonna live in full time. But yeah, I mean, it's many pronged. These things are many pronged, and I think, it's gonna take, as Mr. Smith and I talked about, it's gonna take some planning, and I'm here to help, and certainly appreciate all your help.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you,
very
ma'am.
much, Howard,
Yes,
for your
sir.
time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I just want to give you a quick little, what you have up on your screen there is a phone call that I got about an RV park. It's going to be these, you want to call this a tiny home, whatever you want to call it. Howard and I had discussion about it, whether subdivision or tiny home, RV. We did discuss going to RV park because it's going to have that quick disconnect on it. It is going down in the Sittenville community on 54 acres.
Okay.
So this is one of the reasons why, I have these discussions with Howard on trying to figure out how do we move forward with this stuff. With this is all gonna be rented. This is gonna be a cute little rental, RV park. It's not far from the lake, so
All right.
it is definitely discussions that need to be had.
Next agenda item is RV park ordinance revision. David is going to exit because he has a little conflict of interest. We have one comment. Perry Smith? Anybody else want to comment about RV parks that's back there? Perry, you got 4 minutes to have at us.
Okay, so I'm Perry Smith. So I believe that most people take living in this great country for granted. Everyone in the world wants to live here, but our own people want to govern the citizens who want to run their own business, so they can't make a profit. They have to close up shop or give up on their American dream. What is your motive for this county to tell citizens what they can do in their RV parks, their tiny homes, or their what the heck? Where's your paper? Where's it at? These guys, anyway. These RV parks look nice. Why place ridiculous rules and regulations on them? American dream is to prosper, not to break even or go under. You are regulating the American citizens to fail before their dreams become reality. I have 108 acres. If my children want to do something once I'm dead and gone on this property, they shouldn't have to worry about you folks up here or putting ordinances in that's gonna screw with what they want to do with the property I leave them. Some people, live in these parks to work in the county? Why make the working man suffer? That's what you're doing if you're voting this ordinance in to, restrict living in RV parks or tiny homes, junkyards. That's what I was trying to think of. You guys are regulating that also. Maybe they live in these RV parks because they just can't afford a house. Maybe they can't afford anything really nice to live on the lake or, on 108 acres of land. Maybe that's the reason they have to live in an RV. And you guys want to put an ordinance in that wants to stop that or something. The less we have, the less y'all are in our lives in this county, the better off we are. Why can't you guys in our county government leave us alone? Why? This is America. This is not communist China. This is America. Why do you think you must control what American citizens do? Why is it in your thoughts that you want to control everything that we do on our own property? It's not your business. It's none of your business. What you guys should be researching, y'all should be researching some of these ordinances that you can gut, that you could gut them out of existence so the American dream can continue to live. You can't just ordinance us to death to where we can't do anything. You brought up a study about people getting hit down here at Exit 4. What kind of studies have y'all done for the junkyard folks, for the tiny home folks, for the RV folks? What kind of study have y'all done that's going to show you the burden, the financial burden you're going to put on them when you put an ordinance in place that's going to cause them to lose their business? You talking about people getting killed at Exit 4. What about all these folks that loses everything they got and they turn to alcohol or drugs and end up dying from that? That'll be something you guys voted in. You guys can't burden the citizens till they have nothing. It's just not your job. Your job, I don't know what your job is. So far, I've seen you guys, putting, ordinances in place, trying to tell people what to do. Wherever he went, the little lady spent all her money on a dang shed that she thought she could live in, but you got plenty of people doing it. But then you want somebody to police around and to stop it. You kick people out of their homes. So what do you guys want? You want more tent cities behind Walmart or Lowe's? That's what's going to happen if you start kicking people out of the only homes they have is RVs or tiny homes or sheds or their livelihood is junkyards. You're going to shut them down. I don't get it. I don't understand why you guys have to be in the working man's business. It's not your business. You've worked your whole life. You have what you have. Nobody bothered you. All of you guys worked your whole life. You have what you have. Nobody bothered you. But you set up on here this board and you come up with these ordinances to limit American citizens on what they can do. It's not your place. It's not your business to tell me or you, or it's not your place to tell anybody in this room what they can do with their own property, how they live their life. Until the day I die, I'm going to consider this America, and I'll treat it like America. That's the way it should be. It's not your place. Let people live. You live and let people live. All of you live and let people live. You guys are going to push people into a total different atmosphere when you start taking their livelihoods away. If you don't believe me, walk behind Lowe's or Walmart. Look at all them poor folks. They was behind Belk's and they got run out, and they just moved. I mean, look at Utica. Utica's gets brought up. Look at that. Is that what y'all want all over Oconee County? You're gonna govern everybody till they just don't make a penny to their name? I went over 4 minutes, I apologize, but come on, guys. Y'all are supposed to be helping the citizens, not hurting the citizens. Y'all are supposed to be helping the working man, not hurting us. I mean, I come straight here from work. I work. I'm a working engineer, what I like to call myself. I'm not a carpet walker. I'm a working engineer. I get my hands dirty, I go home and I work on my property, and I hope to give to my kids one day. And I hope they will be able to do with my property when I give them something that they want to do that you guys don't stop them from doing. Plan to help, not to hurt. This is the planning commission. Plan to help, don't not hurt. Help us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else want to comment on that particular topic? Okay, let's go to RV parks. We passed the ordinance and we found that we need to add a couple of things just by omission. And if you'll turn to the last page of your backup material, you will see them highlighted in yellow. And I thought we would take them in order that we have them presented. A site plan. Right now, for some reason or other, it didn't quite make it in the original ordinance. So you have that in front of you right now. Would anybody like to comment up here on a site plan? I just want to take them in order that we have them. Anybody?
Mike, this is an ordinance that's already been passed by council.
This has already been, it's in existence, it's already been passed, and we're putting in for a revision to it, and this is what we want to add to it, the need for a site plan. Anybody have any comments up here about a site plan? Permits. Now, this does not cover the existing RV parks. This is for new RV parks. And it just says that, okay, you have got an RV park that is meeting the requirements of the ordinance, and the ordinance was designed for safety and health so that we could get emergency vehicles in and out of these areas satisfactorily and get people removed if they need an ambulance or fire service. The permits are just to say that, okay, you've got the road widths you need and that things have been built or the electrical service is where it needs to be in the septic tank system, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody have any comments about that up here? The need for that? There will be a fee associated with the RV park permit as determined by the county council, and it's not a yearly fee from what I understand. It is just a one-time fee to issue that permit to cover the costs of the people that have to go out there and look at it and review the plans, the site plan, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody got any comments about that?
I do, but I figured I'd save them till the last.
Well, what I was going to do was come up with a motion to perhaps approve site plan permits and fees.
Then I'd like to ask a couple questions in.
Go ahead.
Right now, for developer subdivision of a residential community, is there a fee that is paid to establish for the cost of review as we have fees here for the RV park? Okay. And under permits, is there, under a residential subdivision, is there a permit that is issued with the approval of that subdivision? Okay.
Everybody all right with site plan permits and the notation of fees?
May I ask what other question?
Is it easy?
Is the verbiage for those in our existing ordinances similar to the verbiage in here?
I basically just copied and pasted and took out what was there and put in RV park.
Okay. So this isn't, in other words, this is not varying from any other land use responsibility at the county.
Okay, let me, anybody else got any down here on the left? Pat?
Are we under site rentals yet, or are we just doing the first three?
No, we're just
Okay.
doing the first three,
Okay,
so all I want
I'm
to do.
good. Go ahead, my question's next.
Okay, I'm gonna call for a motion to accept the following revisions to the current RV park standards ordinance that are in the backup material dated September 2021. Site plan, permits, and fees. Is there a second to that? Want me to read it again?
Please.
I call for a motion to accept the following revisions to the current RV park standards ordinance that are in the backup material that is dated September the 20th, 2021. Site plan, permits, and fees.
You need a second.
I do, it would be helpful.
I'll second. I'd like for us to be able to discuss it.
Well, we do, now we have a debate about it. It's open, the floor is open, whoever wants to.
Why did you not include site rentals in that motion?
Because I think that site rentals will be kind of controversial. I think these three things are needed, and rather than get into site rentals at this particular time, I thought we'll get those first three done and hopefully approved, and then we can get into site rentals. And we might lose sight of site plan, permits, and fees. I figured that that would be the best plan of action at 4 o'clock in the morning.
It's my understanding from staff that site plan, permit, and fees are a part of the standard operating procedure, as it were, for any kind of developmental change to a piece of property. So I could see those three that, for whatever reason, was left out of this particular ordinance, shouldn't be.
You know, it's funny sometimes when you work with things and you start seeing, uh-oh, we forgot this or that, or we need to help her out. Vivian's had some problems with some site plans, some real genuine problems. And we need to help her out with that so that she can do her job effectively. Remember, this ordinance was designed for safety and health. Anybody else got any? Yeah, Gary.
Okay, just a point of clarification. I'm wondering if we approve your motion, the county council is still going to have to vote on this, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it goes from us probably to the PED group and then on up to the county council. Anybody else got anything? Then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion that I made, if you want me to read it again, you want me to read it again? All those in favor, just raise one hand. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes, and the vote was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-0. All right, now let's take the next topic, which is site rentals.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure,
can I make one statement to what we just approved there?
sure.
If you don't mind, because I think it's important, because I think all of us up here are very concerned about, and I don't know that anyone would disagree, that we're all very concerned about personal property rights and the ability. I'm the biggest advocate for personal property rights that there is, as far as somebody treading on what I can and can't do. At the same time, this board's job is to make sure that an individual's personal property rights don't tread on their neighbor's personal property rights. And I oftentimes use the example that I shoot targets all the time off of my front porch, but the moment I start shooting and my bullets start flying into my neighbor's windows, they've lost their personal property rights at the expense of my personal enjoyment. And so when somebody comes and develops a site plan and the county's able to review that, this is nothing more than saying, hey, we just want to make sure you're staying within the parameters of what your property is, and that you're not affecting the neighbor's property in doing so. So, that was all.
Great, good. Okay, let's talk about site rentals. We talk about RV parks, and the whole idea of an RV park is that those RVs are moved periodically. And right now, we don't have any requirement that they be moved. I remember when this was put together, that there was a debate about this. And right now, what we said was, correct me if my memory is failing me here, we said you can't attach any structure to the outside of an RV. In other words, a deck of some sort or something like that. Well, what has happened is people have said, okay, I will build that deck, but I'll keep it 1 inch away from the RV so it's not attached. And then you go back and you say, well, what is the purpose of an RV? It's something that is moved, that you move. And then you start to ask yourself, are we losing sight of what an RV is or what an RV park is? Or is it really a mobile home park for some people? So the thought was, okay, maybe this is a device that's on wheels. It's got quick disconnect type utilities. It has no permanent attached additions. So why don't we require these to be moved periodically? They can stay in the same RV park, just move them to a different site. So this last revision down here is saying that they have to be moved every 6 months. And let's just have an informal discussion about that. You heard Howard talk about RVs and et cetera. For your information, the state, if you're in a state park, you're required to move it every 14 days. You can move it to another pad in that state park, but you're required to move it every 14 days. The county requires you to move it every 30 days. You can move it to another pad within the county park, but you have to move it. So what we have in this revision is, after 6 months, you still must move it so that it doesn't become a permanent type, not residence, but a permanent type structure. So let's have an informal discussion here. Alex?
Well, the first thing that I thought about is the park model units. Well, those are, technically RVs, I guess. They don't typically move often once they're in a place. They're also usually really nice from the ones I've seen and been in. So I think there should be some, and I think they're categorized slightly different. It seems like there was something in the original ordinance that had something about park model RVs, but I can't remember exactly what it showed. But I believe that picture that you showed earlier, I think that's technically a park model RV, where they're usually wood. They're a little bit more structured than the RVs that go up and down the road on a regular basis. So if nothing else, there should certainly be something included in there to address those park model units.
Let me also, I forgot to add this. This is not going to affect the existing RV parks that are already there. This is for new RV parks that are coming on board, because we know that there are a lot of RVs with structures attached to them, et cetera, and they're just not going to be able to be moved. but this is for new RV parks, or RVs and RV parks. Down here, yeah, Frank.
With the state stating that they can be lived in till you die, basically, a permanent structure, I don't see why we should tell a business that they have to move their building technically. It'd be like going into a subdivision saying, okay, that house has to be moved every 2 years. These are people's residents. If they're in a private park, not a county park or a state park, but in a private RV park, and that park owner says you can have that, you can rent that space, lease that space, whatever it may be, why should we tell this business that they have to move that camper or RV, whatever you want to call it, every 6 months? If that guy's paid for a year lease for that particular site that he wants, then that RV should be able to stay there for that year. And if he renews his lease, it stays there till he decides he wants to move to another site or moves out of the park totally. I just don't think we should be telling businesses that they have to move technically their inventory around every 6 months. And in an RV park, the RVs and things is pretty much their inventory that they have in the park. And I just don't think we have the right to tell them to move them around.
Pat? Gary?
Yeah, I'm just making suggestions here, but I respect Mr. Pearson's comments there. I personally think if you got an RV and one of the qualification requirements be you keep tags and insurance on it, because if our requirement's gonna be you're gonna have to move it, well, you're supposed to have tags and insurance on it. So a lot of people pull them up, they'll sit them there, they'll sit there a year, the tires dry rot, and then they're not worthy to be moved. They become a hazard. So, and that might be a state recommendation or something, but, you know, a lot of these folks are trying to avoid property taxes, not, you know, they probably don't have no insurance on, you know, their fire hazards. My other part of my site rental thing is, why would this information be sent to the planning director? Shouldn't that go to codes or something like that? The last sentence in the site plan?
No, I think it has historically gone to the planning department.
Planning
Just
department,
historically.
it says planning director, which is you, isn't it?
No, I'm not the planning director.
Okay, that's Vivian, okay.
Vivian
All right.
is the acting planning director. And
All
she
right.
rolls her
So
eyes around when you
that's
say
worded, that's worded correctly, then I rescind that comment. Thank you.
Mike?
Did you have something first?
I was just gonna ask okay, from my observations, there seems to be a problem with 6 months in my mind. You know, it needs to be longer than that. To me, I think of someone who's coming into our community to help with some type of work that needs to be done, and they know they're gonna have to stay more than 6 months. And if they find a place to bring an RV to live in for that period of time, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's not long enough.
You have a suggestion?
I'm not sure what the right period of time is, but if I was gonna be liberal, I'd say 2 years.
Mike?
I'm not sure that we accomplished what we had tried to accomplish when this whole process started years ago. Because we're talking about an RV park. I mean, this is an RV park, campground kind of scenario. That being the case, telling somebody they need to move every 6 months, 3 months, or whatever, shouldn't really matter. It's an RV park. It's like a car wash is a car wash. It's not something else. We originally came into the RV park because of housing issues. Whether we call it a tiny house or whatever, it started because there was a place in the county where the owner was bringing RVs in, packing them in. They weren't connected to sewers. They were draining out onto the neighbors. The sewer was draining out onto the neighbor's property, who was complaining, and DHEC couldn't really do anything about it because we didn't have the right code enforcement to begin with. And that's a real brief synopsis of the real problem. And we said, well, they're bringing in RVs, so let's have an RV park ordinance. It really wasn't about RVs, it was about limited housing or limited space, and it dealt with the fact that the emergency vehicles couldn't get down to people, and there was a risk factor. They couldn't get down into, depending on whether they didn't have the right gravelled surfaces for a fire truck to get down to help somebody if there was a fire. And so we developed something that said, hey, for an RV park, let's do this. Well, this is great if it's an RV campground. But that's really, we really never addressed the issue that's the problem, and that's this need for housing of something, whether they're using an RV or whether they're using a tiny house or whether they're using this mini mobile home that we saw a moment ago that just happens to be brought in with a tongue and wheels, which looks like a mini mobile home. I hate to say we need to do something else, but if that's our problem, that's what we should be addressing. I think that 6 months, 3 months, it doesn't really matter to me. It's a campground. It's what we've talked about right here. So do we have in other words, are we talking about the right thing? Or do we have another issue that we're trying to stick in this box?
Anybody else? Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion and see where it goes from here.
I'd like to make a motion, if I could.
Sure.
I would like to completely take out the entire site rental section of this and not even have it in the ordinance. We already know that spaces are rented by the day, week, month. We shouldn't be telling them they have to move 6 months or ever, whatever. And we don't need to tell them to keep records and hand them over to the Gestapo when somebody asks for them. That's what this is saying. You show me your records of how many campers you have in here and when they moved. I think that whole thing should be taken completely out. So my motion would be to omit site rentals out completely.
Is there a second to that?
Okay, for grins, I'll second that. Because I want to discuss that.
All right, let's have a discussion then. Go ahead.
Vivian, without me going back through this whole thing, did we properly put the information in there that dealt with the safety aspect and dealt with the sewer aspect? The safety aspect being that emergency vehicles couldn't get down some of the roads and drives that were being created.
Yes, we did do that. That is the all-weather road. What is it, 10 feet wide?
Did we address something in here that says, okay, now that you've started adding on in a residential community, when you start adding on, you still have a buffer that you can't go over your property line and you can't go up to a setback line as far as adding on. Do we have anything in here that says, hey, I've got my parking spot, now I'm going to start adding on to it? It's not a subdivision, so we don't know where we've encroached onto the neighbor other than the owner saying we've encroached onto the neighbor. But the owner's not going to be concerned if an emergency vehicle can or can't get down in there because it hadn't crossed their mind because nobody's reminded them of it. So my concern on this, if we approve this that says no time frame, right now, time frame is the only thing that we're controlling the permanent structures expanding beyond the RV itself.
But why should we be controlling the length of time they can stay in a certain site? Why should we be controlling?
We shouldn't be controlling the time is the point, but right now it's the only mechanism in this document that keeps them from building a structure all the way around this unit that expands. In any other division of land, you have a border called a property line that you can't expand beyond. Now, what we're doing is we're depending on the owner who is to say, oh yeah, go ahead, add that roof, add that deck, add that storage unit, add that extra outside bathroom, add that extra living space, and and now you're building out something that doesn't necessarily have a stop line. And while that's the owner's responsibility to do, and the neighboring RV might get pissed, at some point, it becomes an issue for emergency vehicles to get in, for gurneys to get in, for an ambulance to get in, that now it's built and nobody's thought about it until the emergency happens.
Those have nothing to do with the length of time they stay there.
It doesn't, and that's why I'm saying, I think we're dealing with two different issues. We're trying to put something in a box and it's the wrong box for it to fit in. That's my point from the beginning. We're building tiny houses on an RV campground.
So if I may, when we look for a site plan for an RV park, it is basically the outside lines of the property, the road, and then they say, I'm putting here, 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 and here. They're not, they're not saying, okay, this site is this big by this big.
Right.
Doesn't matter to us.
Correct.
So yeah, I mean, whether it's encroaching on somebody else's site.
Or more importantly, encroaching into the fact that that fire truck can no longer get down that
Get
road.
down that road. Correct.
And that's why we started this to begin with. This whole ordinance started because of that. And we've built this thing, and now we're trying to put something else into this ordinance.
But if the fire trucks or emergency services can't get down the roads, that's something for our codes guy to go tell this guy, say, listen, you gotta move that out of the way because you gotta have 10 feet for this guy to get down this road.
Doesn't matter now because all three places have just burned down because we didn't tell codes guy until after the fire truck couldn't get down there.
No, the codes guy can't, I mean, basically.
He's gotta have
He's gonna tell you
parameters.
how big the road is, yeah, he has bigger issues than.
Okay. I still say that we don't have the right to tell them they have to move every 6 months.
I don't disagree, but I think that's the only mechanism in this to try to do the other thing that we're trying to do. And so I don't know that we're doing it right to begin with.
Gary, you got anything to add? Pat?
I was thinking that maybe we should table this until further time, because, it seems like we got a little bit more homework to do. I moved to table.
Help me out here, Vivian, now what do we do?
I need a second.
I'll second.
May I?
Yeah, I'll second the tabling motion.
If you table it, it has to come up next meeting,
Yeah.
for one. For two, we have done research on it, and I believe in all the RV ordinances, when we were putting this one together, they all had time limits on it. And I guess we thought having, no permanently attached additions was gonna work, so we didn't do the time limit thing. So I have an RV park whole folder of, all the research we've done.
Why is 6 months the magic number?
I think 6 months was just picked as a good one. Duke Energy's here for, 6-8 weeks?
Sometimes they're here for
Sometimes
longer
2
than that.
years.
They're here for a couple of years or so.
I mean, that's why I was trying to think, what would be the most that someone would feel like, hey, I got this space, I don't want to have to move, because, that's a lot of trouble.
So is it really getting moved or is it the ability to move it? I mean, in other words, who's going to go out there and police, did it get moved? I mean, they're not going to chalk the wheel like you would at a parking space downtown. They're not chalking the wheel and saying it's moved. But the ability to move it means that it does need good tires on it. It does need to be tagged, and it does need to be not built around all four corners.
That's the.
So are we accomplishing, by having a time, are we accomplishing the ability for it to be movable? Whether somebody actually goes out there and checks it or not.
I would go for it being tagged, licensed and tagged and move ready, or what do you want to call it, rather than setting a time limit, they have to move it every 6 months. I mean, if they take the tag off of it, it's just like an automobile, it's not taxable anymore. So,
Just point of order, Mr. Chairman, we have a motion that we should be discussing is whether or not we're going to table this.
well, our original motion was mine.
Did we get a second on that
I did.
motion?
I said,
Table it anytime frame.
I don't think we should table it at the moment. I think we should deal with it. It's important to the staff.
So I kind of think what you're saying is it's not necessarily enforceable that every 6 months, somebody's going out there and checking to make sure. But it's the idea if somebody walks up in an RV park and there's, an elaborate structure built around it that's obviously been there for a year, it has not been moved.
The thought being is if you've got an alleyway right there for the fire truck to go, and you've got to have enough space for that RV to come out into that alleyway, then chances are they're not going to build a deck or a permanent structure on the roadside of that RV.
Yeah.
Meaning the fire truck is not going to be inhibited from getting down that pathway.
Yeah.
And so I'm not as concerned about somebody going out there and policing. Personally, I'd like to build a nice deck. I wouldn't want somebody to make me go roll that back. I might not roll it back into the same place. But it keeps me from putting a structure and keep adding on, and all of a sudden now I've jumped out into the street.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily that you're actually moving that RV every 6 months, because really nobody's going to know. But it's the idea that you're not going to build an elaborate structure and house and,
On all four
double-decker
walls of that RV.
decking and, just because it's obvious that you couldn't move it in 6 months. So, I can see that. I can understand that part.
help
We
us
have a
out
motion
here.
that we need to vote on.
We have a motion, his motion supersedes mine to table it, so we have to vote on that one first.
Yeah,
before we
that's
do
the
any
first one we have to vote on. If we table it, if we vote to table it, we have to bring it up at the next meeting, which is going to be the public hearing on development standard. We can put it at the end. It may be a long meeting, but we will do what we have to do. All those in favor of tabling it, just raise a hand. Here's one hand. Okay, there's two hands. All those opposed on tabling it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the tabling motion fails. It's 2 for it and 4 against it. All
May
right,
I just make a comment? I just want y'all to know that it's okay with me that we don't table it, but I felt like we at least would have that option to delay a decision on this if we wanted to. I'm fine with making a decision tonight.
Vivian?
The planning director or the designee is actually, that's the wording that's in this, but that's in all of the ordinances. That's for signs, it falls on the planning director or their designee. It is the planning department's responsibility.
6 months was an arbitrary number. We had to come up with something, and so we chose 6 months. Again, this doesn't affect any of the RV parks that are in existence now. It's for future RV parks. And again, I go back to Jeepers. If you got wheels on it and it's jacked up, you should be able to move it.
Okay, I just want a point of order. We're supposed to be discussing the motion, which was to delete site rentals from.
That's right.
Okay, I don't know if we want to go ahead and continue to discuss, possible solutions before we vote on that.
Well,
So we're
debating.
discussing whether we're removing this line item or not. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's what the motion is.
Quick comment. I think it is dumb for us to put a time frame. At the same time, I think it is a viable mechanism to keep somebody from building in the driveway on the roadside of the structure by putting a time that says, hey, you got to move this. Not that, again, anybody has staff to check it, but I think it is a viable option to get somebody from building on the roadside of the RV.
Go ahead. No, wait a minute, let's just wait a minute. Let's keep going here. So are you thinking that we need to revise this thing, or do you think we ought to?
I think that we're trying to put a circle in a square by talking about something that is full-time living. I think we need to come up with something that deals with full-time living in mobile home parks or whatever, and that's what that is. And that this is something entirely different. But for now, to solve this, which our original intent of putting this together was from a safety standpoint, the site rental timing is the last element to help accomplish that. Because we know that people are building permanent structures, which I think is great, but it's no longer really an RV park at that point. It's a mobile home park that people haven't taken the wheels off of. We just don't have a mobile home park ordinance.
And to clarify, you can still, if you have hunting property or something, you can still park an RV there, and this won't apply to you.
This has nothing to
this
do
is
with
an
except
RV park.
four more campers on a particular piece of property.
All right. Is there any more comments about this? And what was the original motion was to remove this paragraph completely, is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and that was seconded. All right, let's call for a vote. All those in favor of removing this paragraph completely, just raise one hand. One. All those opposed from removing this paragraph, raise one hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, then I guess the paragraph stays there. Is that correct?
It's not in there right now as it is.
I think that.
It's an
Chairman, I think you're
addition.
about to make a motion, when Frank, got the floor.
God.
If I may for 1 second,
Yes.
just to clarify. All of this has to go past the attorney. It has to go to the planning, in ordinance form. He has to do all his legal stuff to it. Then it will go to the planning economic development, then it goes to county council. So this isn't a one here and done thing.
Yeah, thank you,
This is
Vivian.
going to be discussed for quite a long time. And
Right.
you also want to we do have in here the definition, minor recreational vehicle park and major recreational vehicle park. So it's, recreational vehicles or recreational vehicle spaces for rent on site on any single piece of property utilized as temporary living quarters for recreational camping or travel use. So that's why definitions are very important.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make this motion. I call for a motion to accept the following revision to the current RV park standards ordinance, site rentals as contained in the backup material dated September 20, 2021. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Now, let's get into a discussion about that. Have we pretty well hashed this over? Well, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of that motion, raise one hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1. Motion passes 5-1. Will somebody go get,
Just say, Mr.
David?
Nix, can you come on in? He's listening.
oh, okay, yeah, he can come on in. Vivian is very correct, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Vivian. Thank you. You always bring us out of the fire. This has to go through an extensive review. It has to go through the attorney, then it goes up before the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and then it goes to the county council. So there are other reviews that are going to go forward with this. Thank you, everybody. Now, the next item is junkyard ordinance. Travis, are you there? You've hung in. Thank you.
Hi, Chase.
My name's Travis Nix. I'm the manager out here at Taltoin and Crane Service in Walhalla. We was up here about a year ago on this same thing. Adam, I don't know if he's here or whatever, or if he's whatever. We had a couple of meetings. We have asked for the definitions between what the state or the county, whatever, is going from junkyard to scrapyard to storage facilities, stuff like that. We was having some meetings, and I tried to contact him a couple of times after that. He was going out of town, and then we've never heard nothing else. And then all of a sudden, and it was back on the agenda again. He brought up the state fairway on certain roads, 183, 11, 123, stuff like that. And then he was talking about on the county side, on the county roads, stuff like that. That's what we was waiting on some details to come from him on all this, and we've never got nothing from him. And then all of a sudden, we see it back on the agenda again. We have towing facilities here, storage yards, recycling centers, stuff like that. We've got people here from all of them. And, I mean, we just don't want to get blindsided, because I know how the county works. In other areas, I've been in the service and dealing with Oconee County for about 28 years. I know how it goes, and they'll blindside you if they don't want you. We're just trying to get the details before it gets on into it, like storage yards. What's the requirements the county's wanting to put out there? What's the difference between a storage yard, a junkyard, recycling center, or et cetera? Because in the county, we have all of them in the county, not us, but there's multiple companies in these areas and throughout the county. And we're just wanting to get some details and stuff like that.
Travis, thank you for coming back. Thank you for putting up with the county, because Adam is no longer here. And,
Okay.
Yeah, he's taken another job.
See, I mean, it was about this time a year ago when this come up. We had a couple of meetings with some other tow companies, recycling centers, or recycling facilities here at the vicinity. I think it was, there's 2 or 3 back here that was here with us. And the last thing was heard was, I'm gonna get the definitions and stuff like that. He says, he's got our contact information. He says, as soon as I get them, I'll get them to you. And the ones that I can't get in touch with, can you try to help me get in touch with them? I said, get it to me. I said, if I have to, I'll print it out black and white and deliver it, hand deliver it. And we just don't want to get blindsided. And then I said, he's like an ordinance. You'll be grandfathered in, you're already in business. I told him, I hate to say it, I know how the county works. I want to see it in black and white. I mean, we just don't want to get blindsided as a business. We're out here to survive, try to survive. And the way it is right now, with the fuel prices going up, insurance and everything else, where you used to be eating hamburgers and hot dogs, you're eating beans and taters now.
Not a good diet.
Well,
Let me ask you a question for you.
Don't run off, Travis.
Go ahead.
To help us, okay, I could just come on board.
Yeah.
But I've learned in other positions to have the other side of the issue come to us with suggestions and, hey, we know we're gonna have some regulations later on.
Yeah.
Let us give us our input.
Well, that's what we was trying to do with
Right.
Adam, and we got to this second meeting, and then we just hear nothing else.
Right. Well, let me tell you, one thing you need to do is keep knocking. Don't sit and wait on anybody. That's the worst thing to do is wait. But get your group together and y'all come up amongst yourselves with some suggestions, some ideas. Because we have to have them.
Yeah.
I'm not in the junkyard business, but
Yeah.
I've been to one. I've bought parts, but I don't know, how long should that 78 Monte Carlos be sitting there?
Yeah.
So come have some suggestions, some ideas, or and some recommendations, and I'm sure it'll make the process a lot easier, to come back with something
Yeah.
positive to y'all.
I mean, we're willing to sit down with any
Right.
one of y'all.
Well,
I mean,
so maybe amongst
Yeah.
yourselves, y'all talk and get a point man or a representative, and everybody give their ideas to you or whoever.
That's what we was going to do at the beginning. All right. I told him, I said, I need to know what the county or state regulates as a junkyard, a scrap yard,
Right.
or recycling, metal recycling like that, and a storage and a tow facility.
Right.
And that's as far as we got.
Travis, don't leave just yet. I've got a question for the chairman, actually. This came up on our agenda because we brought it up or because county asked us to, council asked us
A
to?
member of the planning commission brought it up, wanted it on the agenda.
Wanted it back on the agenda. Travis, you're in the towing business, is that correct?
Towing and crane service.
There are new members on the board here. I do remember you saying something that was very impactful the last time you were here regarding that when you tow something, it sits in the yard and you're under state regulation as far as, even though you've not made money on that product for having towed it, there's still certain things that you have to do and it's sitting in your yard.
We have to, in 30 days, we have to send in to the state of South Carolina to request the registered owner's information for the vehicle. Then, when we get that back, that may take South Carolina, it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. I'm waiting 6 weeks now from North Carolina. Florida, you're looking probably 6 to 8 weeks. Once you get that back, you have to send out a registered letter to the owner stating you have the vehicle, this is the charges on it and everything else like that. They have 30 days. At the 30 days, you got to wait till that 31st day, then you go to the magistrate, and then it's another 30 days. So that's, I mean, you're looking at 120 days usually at the minimum.
And these are cars sometimes that are wrecked that the owner may not even care anything about
Yes.
having back. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that you, Lee?
Yes, it is.
Lee was also, he's in the impoundment business, and I remember him going into this difficulty that you guys
Yep.
have with this whole process. And there are a lot of different moving parts here.
Yes,
A lot
there
of
are.
different, and we need to be very careful that the definitions address each one as this thing, if it moves forward. so
That's
that we
why I
get-
asked for the definitions at the start from Adam.
Well, obviously, we need to fall back into our trench perhaps and regroup.
And plus, go ahead.
No.
We get old motorhomes. People will try to hook a rope to them, pull them down the road, brakes lock up, transmission locks up. They pull them on the side, get them to the side of the road or leave them in the road. We get the call, we go get them. You send the paperwork off. That thing was sold 10 years ago. Or a camper. A lot of people don't register campers when they sell them from person to person. Then we have to set them on our lot for so long, and then it's been 6 months, ain't nobody gonna come get it. Or it's deteriorated so bad that I ain't pulling that thing down the road. Then we have to tear them apart. The last time here, Ms. Brock come in, and I asked her, I said, how about checking to get us a pass to haul this material to the landfill? We just had to do away with 2 campers. You could not pull them down the roadway safely. It cost us about $400. We got 0.
To tear it up and haul it to the landfill.
Yes, sir. We had to take our manpower to tear it apart and put it on our dump truck and haul it to the landfill. We had paid almost right around $400 for 2 campers.
My point in asking Travis
What
that
about,
was,
excuse me, what about that pass you're talking about? What does that give you a pass to do? Haul it on the road or not have to pay?
Not have to
ticket
pay to
fee?
dump it at the landfill.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
We've got 2 campers there. We've got $400 in just to Oconee County Waste Management. That's not including our fuel for our tractor, fuel for our dump truck, or manpower.
I just want to make sure I understood what you were asking for. Thank you.
the reason I asked Travis to go through that is I think this is a much bigger animal than just saying, oh, that's unsightly, put a fence up. I think that this is a big project that really needs to take some time to look into to figure out what all it entails. And I'm not sure who brought it up back up on our stuff, but it's a project.
Vivian, do you have any, did Adam leave any information with you in a folder or anything that you
There's
could?
a bunch of stuff in the folders. I recall, the meetings, so that there was a Saturday meeting he was setting
Yeah,
up.
it was a
and
couple of
it didn't
Saturdays
happen.
and one during the week.
Yeah, I recall, I
Yeah.
don't know what happened with everything. I do have a folder that's pretty large with lots of stuff in it, because we've done lots of research on this. That's where I said, even with the RV parks, definitions.
Yeah.
Definitions are very, very important.
I learned
One of
that.
my cards.
I learned that years ago. Get the debt, either it's county, state, or what, their definition of the criteria.
All right, let me ask you,
Go ahead.
I think maybe we need to retrench here and see if we can't pick it up where Adam left it off. In other words, I was using Lee as a contact point. He happened to answer the phone mistakenly. And
I have a question for the chairman, if I may.
sure, absolutely.
I'm just trying to figure out what the motivation for the junkyard ordinance is. They already got state regulations. What is the motivation for a junkyard ordinance? Is it our county comprehensive plan driving that, or, I mean, it's just gonna be more onerous regulations that restrict their ability to do business, so. Just like to know, is there any safety involved, or is it aesthetics?
If I may, sir?
Yes.
We are redoing our systems for code enforcement, and just this year alone, I had her actually go through when she was inputting everything, moving everything over, finding out exactly how many are junk cars or whatever you want to call them. And there was 90 code enforcement cases, 32 of them were cars. And that's code enforcement, those are complaints.
And were those, somebody has 3 junk cars in their front yard, or were those businesses that are,
They are the junkyard, the junk cars in.
it's people's yards? Which again is a whole completely different element
So
to this.
why do we have to regulate junkyards then? Why can't we regulate those type of issues if we have to regulate
The
anything?
state actually, to some degree, has a little bit of a definition that those are falling under, from my understanding. And so now we're trying to battle with what the state is saying versus this guy who's got 3 cars in his yard.
All right, let me try to bring this thing. Lee, I know you want to come up here. I'm thinking that maybe we, as a committee, need to have a workshop, maybe about this thing.
I would like to hear what these guys have to say, though.
Well, I'm going to bring Lee up here. Lee's going to come up here.
I would like,
Back here that come in after the meeting started.
since these guys have given their time this evening, I would like to hear what they have to say. At the same time, I think we should let them know that we shouldn't be making any decisions on this until there's a full-time director, whether that's Vivian or somebody else, because ultimately, that director needs to be involved in whatever takes place. So, but
You have anything else for us, Jerry?
Well, I mean, like he said, we're already doing what the state, we passed the South Carolina Highway Patrol. You gotta have this to be on our rotation. We're passing, like us, we're in the Walhalla City, we're just outside the city, but we're still in the fire district. They come out, they do our annual fire inspection, we pass it. Business license, everything else like that. I don't even know how many business licenses we got, but we got a wall of them out there. I mean, and it's just like everything else. I mean, like he said, you're trying to regulate everything so much that, I hate to say it, you're trying to push the little man out. The company I work for has been in business since 1976. That's all y'all got any more questions? I know one of y'all up there. But that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Lee, did you want to?
and there's another.
While Lee's coming up, tonight we were just discussing the definitions, and this junkyard ordinance originally started as a safety thing, had nothing to do with towing companies, like,
Lee.
Lee, Mr. Lee. I mean, it was a safety issue. Some of these places, like the one on 59, is a snake infested hazard and it came about to be not regulated for what he did, but to cover it to where when you drive down the road, you didn't see these junk cars piled up. I understand, and everybody understands, that these guys, they tow a car in, it's wrecked. Say I wreck my car, he comes, picks it up, the insurance totals it out, it sits there. Sometimes it sits there a month. Sometimes, I mean, depending on the insurance company. And then it's towed somewhere else, to a junkyard or to a scrap yard that gets rid of it. But at the beginning, the concern was the safety of keeping these places clean, keeping them out of the view when you're driving down some of our roads. People don't want to look over and see 30 acres of junk cars that are less than 50 feet off the highway. That was the original intent of the ordinance. It wasn't to tell them they couldn't tow cars or they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. It was the aesthetics, maybe that's the word, to cover the front of it to keep people from seeing it going down the road. We wasn't trying to tell them they couldn't do this, because, I mean, everybody knows, or at least most should know, that when the towing business is, today you're busting butt, tomorrow you're not doing anything, and then all of a sudden you've got 50 cars sitting in your lot that may sit there a while. But in junkyards, the reason, and it was mainly steered toward junkyards to make them safer, because the kids that are growing up now are not the same kids that were growing up when me and Mr. Lee and a few others were growing up. We knew better than to get out and mess around and stuff like that. Now kids just walk right into it and go behind a big car and smoke a joint or whatever, and they start fires and burn places down. It was a safety issue that way. It's not telling them they can't do it, because a junkyard is something this county needs. It has a function. It keeps cars on the road, new ones and old ones. But we wasn't trying to stop business. We were trying to make it to where it's safer for our children in a lot of residential areas that have junkyards. That was the initial, at least from my standpoint, was the initial point of a junkyard ordinance. So,
Lee.
Good morning, good evening. It's been a long weekend. I'm Lee Richardson. My wife and I own Death Valley Towing. My goal here tonight is to put some quantity, some quantification to this issue for you. Our business will tow about 5,000 vehicles this year. That's a fair amount. We're not a big company. We're not a tiny company. If you come to my lot on any given day, we will have approximately 50 cars sitting on the lot. And my lot will only hold about 100, squeezed tight. There'll be 50 sitting there that are wrecked and waiting on insurance. Of those 50, 12 of them will be picked up and carried away to a Copart or an IAA to be dismantled. That leaves a pretty good number. Those are cars that had liability-only insurance that I will not get paid for at not one penny. I don't recover the cost of my tow. I don't recover the cost of storage. I don't recover the cost of keeping that vehicle safe, of paying insurance for it, of paying rent to have space to store it. I don't recover a penny of that. Last year, our business wrote off in excess of $150,000 of unrecoverable revenue. Do you know what a difference that makes to a small business? That's the difference of my employees having medical benefits. That's a big number today, okay? The best case from day of accident until the day that I get a title or a bill of sale from our magistrate is 89 days. If it's a law enforcement tow, I have to stop charging storage at 60 days. There's a gap there, okay?
At the end, I'm gonna take and spend about $200 to $250 of time, labor, and fees to get through this magistrate's process. Now I'm gonna take this car to Mr. Jake back here. And you know how much I'm gonna get for it? On average, just over $200 right now. I'm losing money every time I do it. Every time. And I do that in excess of 150 times a year. It is a terrible situation for a small business to be in. The towing business does a lot to give ourselves black eyes. We have the lots down on 59. There are some old line towers around that have got 1,000 cars sitting on their lot. I don't know why. I don't understand it, because there's a lot of money sitting there, and you shouldn't let money sit still. That's why we need places like these, so that we have a place to take these, because if we don't have them, guess where the cars are gonna go? They're gonna sit on my lot. I'm not a dismantler. I'm not a junkyard. I'm not a recycler, and I don't want to be. There are risks in the junkyard business. There is risk of environmental contamination. There's workers' comp risk. There's huge, huge risk out there. Nonetheless, it is a vital part of our economy. We have to have a place for things to go when they reach the end of their lives. That is why these organizations are critical to us. Yes, they should be regulated to an extent. And I'm gonna step away now, and I hope this has given you an idea of the magnitude of the problem. But I'd like to turn the floor, Mr. Chairman, to the gentleman from
Sure.
Spring Valley Recycling, who can give you the details of the different classes, the throughput, and the struggles that these guys go through. We're here to support them, and to hopefully, as Travis said, be out in front of a problem before it hits us square between the eyes like a baseball bat. And that's what we're afraid of every day. Mr. Chairman, are there any questions?
Well, I had just one general comment. I had talked to Annie, the Oconee Economic Development lady, and I had asked her if there had ever been any interest in say, 2 or 3 counties getting together and having some kind of recycling facility for cars. And she said there, not that she was aware of, et cetera, et cetera. It's a real problem, and you wonder, the county pays money to haul trash over to Georgia, and you wonder if it gets to the extent, and I've been around and seen some of the yards, et cetera, if the county can't somehow or another get some kind of contract to where cars that are to be recycled or demolished can be towed to some kind of facility where they can be recycled. That's just some thoughts at 4:30 in the morning.
Not to be too blunt, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd rather see it in the hands of private individuals, because invariably, when the government gets tied in something like this, it becomes much more expensive.
This is the idea that I got after I proposed that to somebody. Believe me, I have had to work with the government before in other capacities. Okay.
All right? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Anybody, Spring Valley man?
Jake Morrisonville, Spring Valley Recycling, or the junkyard. Okay. Right now, I'm kind of fighting with the sheriff's department. They issue the permit for the non-ferrous metals. Okay, so they've revoked my permit for non-ferrous metals. And they're telling me that I can't buy cars, I can't buy scrap, or anything, because cars have non-ferrous metals. The legislation reads that anything with a significant amount of iron or steel is not considered non-ferrous. The day they come down there and revoke my permit, they said they could take me to jail because I had a air conditioning unit I'd picked up from a lady. She wanted it out of her yard. I picked it up, put it on a trailer, I pulled in. They pulled in behind me. They told me they could fine me for that because I no longer had a permit for non-ferrous metals. I said, that's not non-ferrous. It has a significant amount of iron or steel. Once you break it down, then you have non-ferrous metals. Okay, the permit is to be able to buy non-ferrous metals in a fixed location. I went and picked this thing up, brought it back to the junkyard to recycle. They're saying I can't even do that. So I went and talked to a lawyer. She told me, go back to work. She said, when they arrest you, she said, call me. She said, then we got a case. She wrote him a nice, she wrote him a nice little letter. So I don't have a non-ferrous permit. So I go pick everything up, bring it back, break it down. I went and got a transport permit to transport non-ferrous metals. I can transport aluminum, copper, steel, all that stuff. But as far as a car, the sheriff's department's wanting to call a car non-ferrous because it has aluminum wheels, parts on the motor are aluminum, it's got copper wire, and catalytic converter. Catalytic converter, the biggest things. New law just put in effect for that. Okay. I tried to explain to them, okay, if I buy a car, they bring me the car, they give me the title, okay, I can buy the car. The next thing, if they have taken the aluminum wheels off, throw them in the back of their truck, okay, they cut the catalytic converter off, throw it in the back of the truck. They take the battery out, cut some copper off of it, stuff like that. I said, then I need to record their transport permit, get their ID, copy the tag number, and a picture of them to be able to purchase this stuff. Now that I don't have a permit, I don't have those requirements anymore. I've been trying to give me a permit where I can operate legally instead of in a gray area. I've been doing this for years. I was the first one in Oconee County to have a non-ferrous permit. I'm one of the oldest junkyards that I know of in the county that's left. I went around years ago, Coffee Road, Richie Reed. I bought his junkyard out when they had the auction. Bought all the cars out of it, okay? Overall, going towards Old Clemson Highway there. Shooks, S&S. I bought their cars, crushed them out. Shorty Holbrooks over on the Mill Hill. I bought all his cars, crushed him out. I've closed up a lot of junkyards, but the guys were retiring and getting out of it or died off. I'm just wanting to be able to do the same thing. Let me die off and then somebody come in and get it and clean it. I mean,
You wanted that recorded, is that right? You wanted that recorded, is that right?
Yeah, but I have to go by what DHEC says. Brian come down there the other day. There's a lady lawyer in Columbia keeps pushing about tires, okay? I'm basically a dismantler. If a car comes in, okay, there's parts on that car that comes off to be recycled at a different location, different places. We break everything down, okay? Somebody said something about, well, what do you do with the oil? Just pour it out behind the building? No. Used motor oil can be recycled into diesel fuel. I can run it in my tractor and cut my fuel costs in half. I mean, old tires, once we break down the tires, there's some good ones that can be resold. Okay, but there's a lot of bad ones that can't. We're allowed to put 5 tires per car in each car we crush. Sometimes I get 6 or 8, I lose count, I'm getting old. But anyway, the tires go back to be recycled.
All recorded.
Like I say, I'm getting old, sometimes I lose count. But as far as junkyards, I mean, the towing yards, these guys do a great job. They've got nice facilities, they keep them clean and neat. Okay, I'm the guy y'all wanna talk about. I'm the junkyard. Years ago, I put a berm up in front of my place to kinda block it. 2 days later, I got a red tag on my gate. I come up to the county, talked to the guy over codes then, and he told me, he said, well, there's two things you can have there. I said, what's that? He said, grass or dirt. I said, well, I can't make money off neither one of those. He said, I don't know what to tell you. I ended up with a picture this big on the front page of the newspaper. And then about a month later, they finally come out that the ordinance that the county supervisor was trying to put out had never been through you guys. So I just want, if y'all gonna put a junkyard ordinance, call me up, I'll help you. I mean, I'll walk you through my place. It's a mess, bring some boots, you know. In a junkyard, you got two things. You either got mud or you got dust. So it ain't like working in a plant somewhere. And it's a dirty, nasty business. Ain't that many people want to do it. I don't think the county wants to get into the junkyard business because, I mean, they've got a hard enough job doing everything they're doing now.
Landfill, yeah.
Yeah. So, but if y'all need any help on junkyard stuff, holler at me. I'll take you on the tour. But,
Okay.
any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I got a quick question, hopefully. What do you think about a guy who's renting a lot and he accumulates 5 or 6 cars that aren't licensed? And, you know, I mean, in some ways, I think of them as your competition. I don't know. What do you think about, you know, junkyards that aren't junkyards? They don't have permits, they start piling stuff up on a
I get
rented
a lot of
lot.
calls from guys like that, because once the county gets involved, hey, man, I gotta get rid of these cars, can you come buy them from me? So, the guy y'all had over code enforcement,
Mike Stevens?
Mike, he would, tell them, say, hey, if you got this car, it's gotta go. If you're not gonna put tags and insurance on it, it can't be here. And he would give them my number and say, hey, he'll pay you for it, and come get it. But, you know,
Okay.
Thank you.
as far as somebody come, you know, I've been there for years. Y'all want me to close down now? Or want me to keep operating and taking more cars out of the county?
Appreciate all your comments, but I want to clarify, because I'm a small business owner myself, and I know that. I don't think nobody anywhere wants anybody to close, because I certainly respect your business, and I see the need for it. But like Frankie was saying a while ago, you know, it's just visually, and somebody might not want to ride by my corn maze and see corn, you know. I understand it. So just a real quick suggestion, what would you be willing if, you know, I don't know how big your road frontage is, but would it be worth to you if we said, well, would you at least put, or suggest, you know, Leland cypresses, as much as I hate them, just visually to protect your neighbor or something, is that doable, is that workable, is that
As long as
agreeable?
I've got a big enough opening to get trucks and trailers in and out, you know, and to get a tractor trailer in to load it, you need a pretty good size opening.
Right, yeah, and that's
it's
all
kinda-
reasonable,
It's
but,
kinda hard to make so my property slopes like this here.
yeah, I've been to your place, I know, yeah.
And it's kinda hard to make a gate, and you can't swing it. So,
But if you had 400 foot of road frontage and we just
let's say I put,
politely ask, hey, would you just put up some evergreens to keep everybody quiet? Would you be willing to do that and everybody be quiet? I mean,
oh yeah, well, I'd rather have a cedar tree. You know, it's Leland cypress, they get the,
I think it's a give and take on both sides, you know, and,
well, that's the reason I put the berm up years ago. And as soon as I put that berm up, then my problems got escalated.
That is a berm of what?
Dirt.
Okay, I thought you'd stack cuss cars on top.
Bourbon car.
Don't give him no ideas.
I want to comment on that. I don't think it's our job to tell these guys what to do with their property. I think if they've got an issue, or if the neighbor, the adjoining property owner has an issue with them, they can settle that with the junkyard owner. I don't think it's our job to be regulating that.
I do think that our job is,
Well,
go ahead.
well, the thing is, I try to be a good neighbor, okay? You know, sometimes 2 or 3 people bring cars at one time. I'm a one-man band. You can't get nobody to work in the conditions that I'm working in when they get the stimulus check. So,
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm getting ready to build a pool on my property, and I've got 20 acres, and they're telling me I've got to put a fence up around my pool.
Who's they?
They, the county, the state, the local, everybody, insurance, everybody telling me I've got to put a fence up. Okay, I think it's dumb, but I'm gonna see, I'd be more worried about the kids walking across my firing range than walking into the pool. But that's the rules that are set up. So I also know that there's huge safety issues with kids getting into areas that aren't necessarily fenced or that. And that's where we have been asked from a planning side, from the comp plan, to address safety with regard to this.
Leland cypresses are not going to stop that.
Leland cypresses are more of a view thing, and I think if somebody doesn't like the view, then maybe they need to move. But
It's about the
Yeah.
trees.
Can we need you to come up here and tell us who you are and whatever. As soon as he's finished, we'll get you up here, okay?
So I guess ultimately, what I'm hearing from everybody in the public here is that as citizens, they continue to get the runaround from us of, we call a meeting, we put something on the agenda, and then nothing happens. And we call a meeting and put something on the agenda, and nothing happens.
Not necessarily anything wrong with that for these folks.
For these folks, except the fact that they have to get off work and come up here to defend themselves. I think that this shouldn't be on the agenda again until we get a permanent director up here that can also sit down and look everybody in the face and say, what can we do to make this work? And get something fixed. So I would like to make a motion, sorry to interrupt you, would like to make a motion that this be addressed only after we get a permanent director in place, and that if we're going to address it, that it be addressed at that time.
Second that motion.
Because it's an important issue, and it's an important issue for these guys, it's an important issue for other people, but it needs to be dealt with right.
It's not going away. It's just a matter of finding a balance, because we know how needed you guys are. We can see that, people still dump stuff on the side of the roads as opposed to taking it somewhere. And it's because it's difficult to get it places, or they don't know about those places. But there's got to be a balance to where we can get, for one, the metals and things that nobody needs to the right places, and still make it work for everybody.
see, I just bought a roll-off trailer, okay? I didn't know when I bought the trailer, the price of the boxes was gonna escalate. They want $9,000 for a 30-yard container. So I gotta wait till the price comes back down before I can use my trailer unless I can find some used one somewhere. But I wanna put everything in boxes. When it comes in, weigh it in, it goes in a box, it's getting ready to go out. The cars, I got cars I sell parts off of. I set them around and trying to get them organized by year, makes, and models. That way it's easier to find stuff in the junkyard. But, at the same time, I don't want to increase my carbon footprint no bigger than it is now. Because everybody's stepping on my toes.
Let's try to deal with this motion right now that we've got. Anybody have any discussion points they want to make about it? Mike has said, let's delay this thing until we get a permanent planning director, and then we will let him revisit this.
Or her.
Or her, and bring these folks in and do where we left off before. Be sure that you guys have got your input. everybody recognizes this is a valuable function nowadays. People have got things that they get rid of, and we need to deal with that. And as you said, Alex, it needs to be a balance. We need to be sure about that.
Well, and I think too, to let you guys know, I don't think anybody up here wants to, I know the last time we discussed this and you guys came in, I didn't know anything about what you guys were talking about, but I walked out much smarter than I sat down here. And so I don't want to vote for anything unless you guys are part of it, so.
Well, come hang out with me for a day.
If you see it on the agenda, I would hope you guys would know about what is coming up on it before that happens, so you don't have to sit through all of us talking back and forth for 2 hours.
Well, how about grandfathering?
I think that was part of the initial discussion anyway, but.
Can we have anybody else got anything about this motion that was made by Mike?
I seconded it.
I think I seconded it, I beat you to it, but that's all right, you can have it. Oh, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of Mike's motion, raise one hand. It passes unanimously. She passed it. Okay. Did you want to come forward and say a few words? Please introduce yourself when you get up here, will you please?
And we appreciate all y'all coming to these meetings.
I wish I could say dinner's being served.
I'm Mark McCall. Me and my wife run Henry's Auto Salvage in Walhalla. And when you were talking about the Leland Cypress, see, I have a problem with that. I'm on a hill. I've got a lot of road frontage. I do have a tall fence with 3-strand barbed wire. And the upper section of it, we let it grow up. Had cedar trees, had kudzu, whatever, growing on it where you couldn't see it. Well, the power company come through, there's a power line right there. So now it's all clean now. So planting stuff is not gonna be an option for me. And if I put the inserts in the fence, the way I'm on the hill, you still gonna see it.
Well, that's what we need. We need input. I mean, I know where your place has been there too.
Right.
So, I'm gonna commend all you guys because y'all been very polite, very cordial, very well spoken, haven't been hostile at all. And in my book, that goes a long ways.
Well, when we was talking to Adam before, was that his name? Adam?
Adam, yeah.
Now, he was coming up some stuff just like getting rid of tires. That's a problem for any junkyard. And he said that he was gonna check into some, getting containers dropped because the county, evidently they still sell them, I guess, but he was talking like he could help us, and get rid of some tires. And of course, all the oils and all that stuff, we handle all that. It's not like we dump anything, but yeah, I mean, anything questions I can answer for you or whatever.
Keep coming with suggestions.
Thank you all for coming in, and please continue to give input on this because we obviously need that here. I mean, we're hearing safety, we're hearing view. At the same time, we're hearing need for service, which encompasses all of it. So hopefully when we get a planning director that's permanent and can continue with what Adam was doing, giving ideas and suggestions and not treading on those businesses.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank everybody for coming. Let's move on to the last item. And it is right there on your screens. Just one more and we're going home.
This is on record.
I put together the annual strategies and I got very sleepy and I forgot 2 of them. They are there on the screen in front of you with the review. I have gone back with the other annual strategies that we're required to review, and I filled in the review to give a lot more substance to them and accuracy. You can read that for yourself, but I would like to bring this to a conclusion. I would like to move that the comp plan strategies that require an annual review was completed on September the 20th, 2021. Those are the last two that require a review. I don't think I need to read them to you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Can I move that we vote on this? All those in favor of accepting that the annual strategies that require a comp plan review is completed by raising a hand? It passes.